All right, guys, hope you're all doing well. It's about 1 a.m. and I figured, hey, let's just turn on the microphone and record a little bit, get my thoughts out there as it pertains to a couple things in Game 3 multiplayer that I would really, really like to see changed. So one of the big culprits that just haunts my dreams and really leaves, honestly, a pretty terrible taste in my mouth is the come from behind mechanic. So how this works is, essentially, if you're 1,000 points behind your opponent, you're going to start getting extra resources. The base amount of resources you get per second is 15. You're going to get a bonus 5 if you're 1,000, and then it can actually go up to a bonus 10, which is pretty insane. So if you have one person getting 20 to 25 and the other person getting 15 over the course of a long battle, they're going to have 3 or 4 extra units, which when you have 2 equally skilled players, that's honestly going to be the deciding factor, whoever got that going. Now, the intention behind the comeback mechanic, as far as I can tell, and with Creative Assembly implementing this, was that you will have situations where there's an early engagement. It's very decisive. One player gets punished badly, pushed back to his spawn zone, whatever, right? And then that individual, the player who beat him down, will then ideally capture the capture points. So then the points are going to start adding up for the player who is winning the engagements. And then the person who got crushed early is going to be getting bonus points to allow them to kind of come back potentially and mount some sort of a defense. So I understand the school of thought, but unfortunately, I've seen this mechanic used. There's a couple issues with it. One issue, and I have played a ton of practice games with Anticity and other, really high-level players, and what often ends up happening is there's going to be early engagements, and we've had games where, like, for the first 6 or 7 minutes, neither of us want to capture the objectives because we know we're trading very evenly. The value is, like, dead center. And what you'll see really high-level players often do in tournaments is they'll let someone capture the objective. So they'll be like, oh, come on, little guy, come get the objective. Wow, you really got me there. And then they let their opponent get 1,000 points ahead, okay? And once you get 1,000 points ahead, you're going to start getting 5 bonus resources per second, which is massive. I mean, it's a lot. When you're just getting like 15, going up to 20 is huge. And you're going to be getting, better units out faster, more units out, whatever, right? So then they go all in an attack. So and then they're going to start value trading. They're getting more resources than their opponent, and it's just such a silly mechanic. And just think of it from a philosophical standpoint, right? If you're looking at a competitive RTS game, when you're making a multiplayer game, you want the players to have equal tools. And I know it could be argued that, well, both players can do this, and that's what leads to kind of a dumb counterintuitive situation, because if both players are doing it, nobody's capturing the objectives, and it just like goes against the whole principle of the game mode, which is territorial control, trading efficiently, and using those efficient trades to take the objectives. So imagine if you're playing, let's say, I come from a competitive RTS background. I played StarCraft, I was pretty high level in that, Warcraft 3, whatever, Age of Empires. Imagine if you're playing in StarCraft, you move out with your Marines and you move into your opponent's Banelings, and then the game was like, oh no, you got outplayed by your opponent. Let's give you a bunch of free minerals so you can push out of your base. Like, that is just so against everything that is the RTS and competitive game philosophy, in my opinion, right? Because it's just, that would just be terrible to watch too. And I see so many people in chat watching and saying like, and I can see it more, like a lot of you guys watching, there's no like open opaque graphic that says the comeback mechanic, but I have seen so many games in tournaments where it's decided by the comeback mechanic. One guy is getting, 25% whatever more resources than the other guy, and that's why he wins. Now, in terms of the battle, you might be like, oh wow, he's making good plays, but there are many games currently where it's simply decided by the comeback mechanic. So what ends up happening is really high level players will simply abuse this. Players won't engage properly because they're both jockeying for position, and essentially you're just going to go fisticuffs and nobody's even playing the objectives, which kind of takes away the point of the game mode. And or like even if it is working as intended, it's not good, because what's going to happen is players can start relying on that as a crutch. They're not going to get better as players. They're not going to develop, and it's going to reward players for playing worse than their opponents, which I just think is really bad. And honestly, I could rant about the come from behind mechanic forever. I just think it's a really, really bad mechanic. I've had games also where we played kind of these hybrid game modes where we don't play the objectives and we just use domination. And like, if you're getting pushed into your deployment zone, the advantage you have is that you have the faster spawns, you have the quicker reinforcements, right? I would love to see players making good plays, because that was kind of one of the big allures of Warhammer 2 land battles. You would have someone be getting crushed, right? They're losing engagements, but they start hunkering down, scrapping, getting whatever little picks they can here and there, taking advantage of their opponent's confidence to get back in the game. And those were the richest games, right? Not seeing like some weird charity mechanic here that is often abused. And there's even situations where with the come from behind mechanic, the person who really needs the come from behind mechanic is actually like not the one getting the points. The other person is. So it's even more of a snowball. And that's the thing I was telling you about, where, you know, really high level players will let somebody capture a couple objectives, and not too much. You just let them get 1,000 ahead and then you go, because then you're getting an extra 5 on top of your opponent. And you're like, you might be getting outvalued, but then your opponent's also snowballing you even further because of this mechanic. I really, really, really think that this is a big thing that needs to be gotten rid of. Like, again, just think of that. Think of any other RTS game you've enjoyed in the past. And I know Total War is a little bit unique and different as it pertains to base building and army management and whatnot, but I would much rather see players scrap. Or, you know, honestly, if somebody's getting perpetually outplayed in the earlier stages of the game, I think that is something we saw in Warhammer 2, and it, you know, there's nothing wrong with the short battle. Even if domination is a little bit longer, I understand kind of the philosophy in that they don't want to see like a 15-minute, you know, of someone just getting camped and grinded. Well, you know, it's just like in Age of Empires or StarCraft. If you lose engagements, you don't need to sit in your base. You can just leave the game if you don't have a chance of coming back. That's normally what happens. Somebody says GG and somebody leaves, which is kind of a new thing for Total War if there's a quicker game. But there's nothing wrong with like quick games. I think it's exciting if there's big, decisive early engagements. I think it helps kind of build personality and build up these really good players and their play styles. You can see what they did well. And honestly, I just think the mechanic needs to go. So there's my late night rant about that. I was just thinking about it and I was like, man, there's just so many issues with this. It's either abused by high level players or it gives people undeserved wins when they were getting outplayed, but somehow they're just getting free units and they can just, you know, win essentially, right? So there's my rant about it. I really hope Creative Assembly gets rid of it. I know there might be some people who like it. I think for like, you know, and I think a good compromise could be you can see here on the little screen, they have like a box, right, where you can turn it on and off. And that would be fine. If you're a new player playing with your friends and you want to have something like that, that's cool, man. I'm nothing wrong with that. But I think for like tournaments and actual like ranked ladder play, I think it's a really like toxic mechanic, and honestly, they should just get rid of it. So rant over about that. I got it all out there, I think. Now, next, the other thing I want to talk about are cultists. Cultists are one of the most unfun units in the game. Anyone who's ever played Cathay and had tried to have a missile line, it is virtually impossible. Because not only are cultists really cost-effective units overall, like the regenerate, poison, like really sustainable, amazing auras if you're playing Nurgle, for example, powerful SEMs, but the summons are just so good. You know, right now, if we strip down the kit on these guys, they cost 800, and if we put them on horseback, they cost 1,000. So for 1,000, honestly, this isn't like a terrible fighting character. It has armor sundering. It's pretty good, but being able to drop plague bearer units like right past somebody's front line is absolutely brutal. And I honestly think cultists, Furies, of course, you know, are very good, and they're one of the reasons why shooting isn't super good in terms of like static shooting, like you know, like Jade crossbows, whatever. But cultists are just really unfun to play against, and I think one of the big things that they could do to change cultists is have it so when these bad boys are when they start the game, they cannot use their summon right away. Either there's some sort of a cooldown on it, like a couple minutes until they can use it, but honestly, that solution doesn't really work very well, because what happens then is the players are just going to run around until they're active and then they'll engage you. I think what needs to happen with cultists is, you know, just being able to summon demons. Yeah, okay. Then I think you need to prove yourself to Nurgle a little bit. I think you need to get in combat and, you know, spread a little bit of that Nurgle plague before you can summon. So if they had something where, you know, cultists need to be in combat for 60 seconds before they can drop their summons, I still think they would be a viable unit, but they would basically be more niche, right? Like you'd have to actually like think about it. Because right now, if you guys have watched it in every single matchup, if you're playing Khorne, you're playing Nurgle, you're playing Slaanesh. Tzeentch is a little bit questionable, because the thing about Tzeentch cultists is you're summoning like a shooting unit firstly, so it's not a really oppressive melee unit like a Plague Bearer, a Demonette, or a Bloodletter. That's just going to ravage the back line. No, like the pinks aren't like as bad, and on top of that, Tzeentch cultists aren't good fighters themselves. So they'll use their stuff, but like this is how cultists should perform more so. Like they're squishy and they die super quick. But if you're a Nurgle cultist or you're a Khorne cultist who's rocking like a shield, amazing. Like honestly, if you look at the stat line of Nurgle or Khorne cultists, they're like kind of like a mini legendary lord. Like are his stats really that different from Prince Sigvald? He's got like 80 less weapon strength and like doesn't regenerate, but I mean, come on, they're super good. And also this becomes a little bit problematic in domination mode, because in a land battle, it would suck, but it sucks more in domination, because basically a cultist does its thing. If they happen to invest a shit ton of resources to kill it, which usually isn't efficient anyways, you just have to ignore them. They're just going to resummon it. And then on top of getting a really good SEM fighting character, they're getting a 700, 800 gold unit summoned, and it's just so damn strong. Another fundamental issue of Cultist in domination mode is if we look at maps like Galleon's Cove, Mountains of Morn, Eye in the North, they all have really tight choke points. So those summons are really good there. Now, I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue with like, if we're looking at Skaven summons, okay? Skaven are summoning clan rats, which can be broken in a couple seconds. Their leadership is shit and they often break. They can summon plague monks. It costs Winds of Magic, right? It costs Winds of Magic. So you're paying one of your most valuable resources and they're not like crazy strong. For vampire counts, the thing about vampire count zombie summons is you could summon a zombie summon on top of like a crossbowman or let's say a Jade Warrior, and they're not going to kill them. It's going to like tarp at them and will be obstructive, but it's not going to just be a bloodletter just playing the Doom soundtrack and going balls deep in your units, right? So I think that is kind of the difference of that. And plus those units also cost Winds of Magic. If we're talking like other summons in the game, we have Draika, who is your legendary lord. It's taking up your legendary lord slot. And she also is on foot, so she can't like ride around and really place these. That's the big issue with Khorne and Nurgle Cultists too, is the fact that they're mounted. So they can really they can juke shots, and any really good people might be like, well, just shoot them. Well, that doesn't work. If you're playing against really high level players, they're going to juke back and forth. They're going to tank angles. You are not going to hit them. And they're going to get those summons right on your missiles, and then they're just going to collapse on the rest of your army with superior infantry. And that's really why Cathay sucks, right? It's because Cultists will summon on top of your shooting, and then Cathay's infantry rely on shooting, essentially to, trade effectively and eventually peel those units off, but their shooting's just shut down by Furies and Cultists. So really, that's the rant for now. I just think those are two big egregious things with domination mode that I would like to see changed. Cultists just need a fat nerf right in the face. Just slap them right in the face. And make it so it's a 60-second charge up. That's still good. If I was playing Nurgle, I'm a Nurgle main. Nurgle's one of my main factions when I play competitive. I would probably bring Cultists still because they regenerate, they have armor sundering, they're really, really annoying and have good staying power. And honestly, after 60 seconds, that's fine. The only one I would not change this with is Tzeentch. With Tzeentch, I have it be an exception for them because they would just be... They're too weak to be in combat that long. They'll die. But the other ones, I think, like, maybe Khorne and Nurgle have to kind of work up the mojo a little bit, but Tzeentch doesn't. So hopefully you guys, enjoyed this little rant. It's kind of a video series I might do a little bit more often, kind of like podcast format where we just talk about other things. But overall, I know, just closing thoughts, we are in the Dark Ages right now. These are the Dark Ages of Total War Warhammer and Warhammer 3. But there's certainly a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, guys. I think a lot of people who have issues with domination mode and maybe haven't come around to it, I really don't think it's necessarily the game mode as much. I think it's the faction variants. It's just, we had so many goodies at the end of Warhammer 2. Warhammer 3 comes out, we get all our goodies taken away. We get some new stuff, but very limited rosters overall. And I think I really do enjoy playing domination because it's brought in many classical RTS elements. Cutting off reinforcements, harassing back points, which is essentially your opponent's base to force an overreaction, which then allows you to take more ground in the middle. There's a lot of things I really like about it. And I think once we get the Immortal Empires added in, dude, it's going to be so goddamn good. I'm so excited. And as far as the points go for domination, 9,000, I think is fine for now. I think we need to get the Immortal Empires in and see how that fares for a while and see what people think. But overall, by the time you start fighting at the 3-minute mark over the objectives, you have a land battle sized army with reinforcements, more or less. So it really just becomes 12,000 to 7 or 6,000 or whatever. But yeah, guys, those are my thoughts. So again, just in summary, I think you absolutely nuke the come from behind mechanic into orbit. I think it's terrible and needs to be getting rid of. I think Cultists need to be changed, that they need to be in combat for about 60 seconds. I think that would be fine. You could even take a more, liberal approach and do 30 to 45 seconds. But there needs to be some sort of limitation because they're just too strong. And any faction that tries to shoot against these demon factions that has static shooting, like Empire Dwarves, is just going to get dunked on by those guys. Can you imagine a poor dwarf player just getting swarmed by Bloodletters and Exalted Bloodletters, and then there's 2 cultists summoning Bloodletters on their rangers, and they just dude, I do not want that. Please no. Please God no. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, guys, rant is over. Appreciate you all. And again, big message I want to kind of leave you guys with is, though we are in the Dark Ages right now, there is a massive light at the end of the tunnel. And I do think once we get Immortal Empires, and assuming all the bugs get ironed out, I think this is going to be the best it's ever been for multiplayer. The fact that we don't need to, have the community memorize PDFs to play in tournaments and do basically high school homework to learn how to play the game, and they can just jump in and play. Domination has done a good job of lowering the barrier to entry in terms of getting into multiplayer easier, and I think it has done a lot to make it more of a true RTS experience, which is certainly good. So Sigmar, bless his ravaged body. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you all, and let me know your thoughts too. I'm sure there's some great counterpoints to some of the things I've said. Maybe you guys have some different opinions on the come from behind mechanic. I'd love to read them below. I'm open to suggestions, but in my experience, and I think a lot of other higher level players would probably agree. Just get rid of it, and I think it will make for a better experience for everyone. Because really, like, the come from behind mechanic is positional play. If somebody is dominating the objectives on the board and they have you push back into your spawn zone, well, you have the advantage, that you have the home field advantage. You have the quicker spawn reinforcements. They're spread out, covering multiple points. You've consolidated your forces and you can push back in a unified way. That is the come from behind mechanic. We don't need points. We don't need free points. That's my shot. All right, guys, take care. Thank you. And we'll see you on the other side.